Okay, that's good.
Yeah,
That's good. I like it.
My favorite one of all times.
Okay, all right.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for a special edition of Aviation News Talk that we call the M&R Joke Hour. Generally on the show, we try to educate and inform you, but today the goal is strictly to entertain you in celebration of the Labor Day weekend. So fasten your seatbelts, because the M&R Joke Hour starts now. Welcome to Aviation News Talk, where we laugh about general aviation. I'm Max Truscott. Hey, if you're new to the show, check out last week's show on how to survive a takeoff crash when the ailerons are reversed. We talked with a pilot who recently survived just that kind of accident, and you'll want to hear his advice. Next week, we'll be back to our regular show of news, information, and safety tips for pilots. But today's show is all about having a few laughs. And just a tip, sometimes at the end of our show, after the music ends, you'll find bloopers. And today we have lots of them, so make sure you listen to the very end. Now let's get started. All right, something is different on this episode, and it's the hour we have been waiting for. It's the M&R Joke Hour. That's right, M is for me, Max. R is for Rob, Mark, and this is the hour where we tell you the jokes that you have sent in, plus a few that we found on the internet. So now that we've got that all out in front of us, and having said that, do you have any kind of disclaimer, Rob, you'd like to give the audience?
No, I think that if you're offended by the first one, stand by, it gets worse.
And that is exactly the disclaimer. If you're someone who's easily offended and you don't like jokes that might go to the edge, this is not your episode. So you might want to tune in again next week, or wait till the kids aren't around so they can't hear them. So, and by the way, if they don't like the jokes, they don't blame us, right? Because they're their jokes.
Well, that's a good point. I didn't write. In fact, I haven't even seen these jokes until just now, so I may embarrass myself.
That's actually part of the fun. I figured we'd just wait to the last minute to send yours over to you so that they'd be new to you as well. So
you asked people to send you jokes,
and some did, and then I went and researched a few others as well. So
wow.
Yeah,
I'm impressed. I am impressed.
Cool. Hey, so just tell me a little bit about humor in your family. I understand you've got a comedian.
You mean beside me?
Yeah, besides you.
Oh, yeah. The young daughter just graduated from the University of Southern California out there in L.A. and has managed to get herself into some comedy. It's not her full-time gig, but people that meet us always ask where she got the comedy side from, and I tell them. Her mother.
Yeah, exactly. And I saw her YouTube video of her first stand-up in LA, so that was kind of.
It's a lot of fun. Seriously, this is such a great idea, Max, because if there's anything that I tell people on a regular basis when they're either trying to get into the aviation industry or mucking around in it once they're there, have a sense of humor. Oh, my Lord, everybody takes everything so seriously these days. I'm surprised people's heads haven't started exploding.
Yep, exactly. You do need a sense of humor. And at least in my family here, the funny one is really my daughter, Julie. I'll come to the house and tell a joke at the dinner table, and she'll put on that sweet, loving daughter voice, the kind that daughters have that just kind of melt their dads. You've had that. Daddy. Exactly. So a couple of times at the dinner table, she said, "Oh, Dad, you're so funny looking." It cracks me up every time she does it. So, all right. So you want to go first? What do you got there on the list?
Sure. We've got a is it Patreon or Patreon?
Yeah,
isn't it?
It's one or the other. I don't know.
It's from a Patreon sponsor, Bill Millette. I hope I pronounced that right. He has a question. How can you tell if there's a pilot in the room?
I don't know how.
Don't worry, he'll let you know.
and we've seen that all the time, haven't we? Yeah. So okay. Let's see. From Jim Pittman, who is also a Patreon sponsor, he said, "I don't know if this qualifies as a joke, but one of the funniest things I've heard was on a Southwest flight after we landed. The flight attendant said, 'Ladies and gentlemen, we are sorry to inform you we have arrived 20 minutes early. We sincerely apologize, but we promise we will make it up to you on a future flight.'" Isn't that cute?
Well, and if any airline could get away with it, it's Southwest.
Yep.
They do have a sense of humor.
Exactly. So what else you got?
All right. Here comes another one from Bill. So what's the difference between jet pilots and jet aircraft?
And?
The aircraft stops whining when you shut it down.
Yeah,
Oh.
now that's appropriate for a guy who runs. What's your blog over there again?
Jet wine. Yeah, that's real funny, Bill. I really liked it.
Hey, here is my favorite joke of all times. This is probably the only joke I've ever put on my blog. And so there are two hunters in Alaska. They hire a float plane to fly them out to a remote lake for a week of moose hunting. And after dropping them off on the shore of the lake, the pilot wishes them good luck, tells them that he'll be back for them in 1 week, and reminds them that they can only bring back one moose, and then he takes off. Well, a week later, the pilot returns. As he taxis up to the shore to pick up the hunters, he sees that they have, yeah, you guessed it, 2 moose. He goes, I told you guys you can only bring back 1 moose, said the pilot. One of the hunters said, well, if you don't think you can do it, that's fine, but your friend Joe flew us out of this very same spot last year with 2 moose. Well, knowing that Joe flew the same kind of aircraft as he did, the pilot said, what? Joe flew you out of here last year? Yep, said the hunter, with 2 moose, and they were lots bigger than these scrawny things. Pilot thought about it for a moment, said, okay, load them up. We'll give it a try. So they loaded the plane. Pilot taxied to the far end of the lake where he just gunned the engine, and the plane is kind of bouncing and skipping across the water. And just before they reach the other end of the lake, the pilot just hauls back on the yoke. And the plane starts to come off the water slowly, but just as it reaches the shoreline, it clips the top of the trees and crashes. And a couple hours later, the 2 hunters wake up in the wreckage. One looks at the other and says, where are we? The other looks around and says, about 20 yards further than last year.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah,
that's good. I like it.
My favorite one of all times.
Okay, all right. Well, we've got one more from Bill.
All righty.
So a passenger is checking in for a holiday flight and asked the person at the ticket counter why there was mistletoe hanging over the baggage counter. So that you can kiss your bags goodbye, she said.
I like that. Nice combination. Hey, go ahead with the next one. This next one is fun.
Well, let's see. During a commercial airline flight, an experienced Air Force pilot was seated next to a young mom with a baby in her arms. Well, the baby began to cry during the descent, and the mother began nursing the infant as discreetly as possible. I would never have looked. The pilot pretended not to notice, and upon disembarking, he gallantly offered his assistance to help with the various baby-related items. Well, the young mother expressed her gratitude, and the pilot responded, that's a good-looking baby, and he sure was hungry. Somewhat embarrassed, the mother explained that her pediatrician said that the time spent on the breast would help alleviate the pressure in the baby's ears. And the Air Force pilot looked sadly, and he shook his head in true fashion like he really got it. And all these years, all I've been doing is chewing gum.
There we go. Combination of airline, military, and child humor. I like that one. I think that's cute. All right, here's one about engine trouble. Not something to joke about, but a 747 was having engine trouble. The pilot instructed the cabin crew to have the passengers take their seats and get prepared for an emergency landing. A couple minutes later, the pilots asked the flight attendants if everyone was buckled in and ready. All set back here, Captain, came the reply, except the lawyers are still going around passing out business cards. You knew we had to get a lawyer joke in here somewhere, right?
Yeah. We don't hear as many lawyer jokes as we used to. Have you noticed that?
Yeah. Well, and by the way, our goal on this show is to offend everyone equally, right? I mean, we want to offend everyone equally.
Well, then I have one that might just fit in dandy here.
Okay.
A plane was taking off from Kennedy Airport in New York, and after it reached a comfortable cruising altitude, the captain made an announcement on the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, wait, let me do this. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Welcome to Flight 293 nonstop from New York to Los Angeles. The weather ahead is good, and therefore we should have a smooth and uneventful flight. So sit back and relax. Oh, my God! Silence. And then after a few minutes, the captain came back on the intercom and said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so sorry if I scared you earlier, but while I was talking, the flight attendant brought me a cup of coffee and spilled it in my lap. Oh, you should see the front of my pants. The passenger and coach looked over at his neighbor and said, it's nothing. You ought to see the back of mine.
And you could just imagine, can you imagine everybody in the back going, oh my God, what happened? We're going to die. Oh, boy. Here's a local joke for folks here in California flown into San Jose International Airport, which is right next to the highway. A DC-10 had an exceedingly long roll after landing, went all the way to the end, and his approach speed was just a little too fast. So the tower says, American 751 Heavy, turn right at the end, if able. If not, take the Guadalupe exit off the Highway 101, make it right at the light to return to the airport. And it would just about work. I mean, that's where the end of the runway is, right there at the Guadalupe exit. So.
Except for the wingtips.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, well, you can't have everything.
Oh, well.
All right, there we go. An airplane pilot dies at the controls and goes to hell. The devil takes him to the newly arrived area, and there are 3 doors marked 1, 2, and 3. The devil tells the pilot he's going to get to choose his own hell, but first, the devil has to take care of something first and disappears. Now, the curious pilot looks behind door number 1, sees a pilot going through flight checks for all eternity. Ooh. He looks behind door number 2 and finds a pilot that's forever trying to resolve an emergency situation. He looks behind the last door and sees a captain being waited on hand and foot by a scantily clad flight attendant. The devil returns just as the pilot gets back to his waiting position, and he offers the pilot a choice, door number 1 or door number 2. The pilot says, I wanted door number 3. Sorry, the devil says. That's flight attendant's hell.
And as an airline pilot, I'm sure you appreciate that. I'm sure the flight attendants out there do as well, too.
Yes. All
right, let's pick on pilots a little more. What's the difference between a fighter pilot and God? The answer is...
I don't know.
God doesn't think he's a fighter pilot.
Oh, God. Okay. All right, I'll see if I can one-up you here.
All right, go ahead.
A Cessna calls the tower and says, Jones Tower, Cessna 12345. I'm a student pilot, and I'm out of fuel. Tower says, Roger, Cessna 12345. Reduce airspeed to best glide. Do you have the airfield in sight? Pilot says, Tower, I'm on the south ramp. I just wanted to know where the fuel truck was.
And I like that because student pilots do say the funniest thing. Honestly, I heard somebody a couple of months ago, a person came off the runway and the tower said to them, say parking. And the guy replied, parking. It actually happened. Oh, man. So here's a joke that I heard many, many years ago, and it's been attributed to various countries. So it's kind of a slam on the country. So we could pick any country and say, oh, this is a joke about the silly people in those countries. So pick a country, Rob. Any country.
United Country?
There you go.
Oh, no, wait. Sorry, can't do that. I don't know. I don't know who I'd like to offend.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Let's just say...
Let's pick a country that doesn't listen to this show.
Well, now that would be a very, very tough call. How about Uruguay?
Uruguay. Okay, there we go. So Uruguay's worst air disaster occurred early this morning when a Cessna 152 crashed into a cemetery. Authorities report that so far over 300 bodies have been recovered and the digging continues.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Okay.
And for those few people who don't know, a Cessna 152 only has 2 seats in it. But anyway, silly joke.
The student and his primary trainer was flying a solo cross country. I remember those days. He lost his way, and before he finally ran out of fuel, he decided to put it down on a road. With hardly any cars on the road, he managed to coast his aircraft into a gas station and said to the attendant, fill her up. The attendant looked at the pilot. Oh, I bet you don't get too many airplanes asking for refuel, said the pilot. Attendant says, true. Most pilots use the airport over there.
It's so funny. It's so easy to miss airports sometimes, too. Hey, I just wanted to tell you a personal thing here. Did I ever tell you that my grandfather was an airline pilot?
No.
Yeah. Yeah, he unfortunately.
For who?
Well, unfortunately, he died in his sleep, but his passengers died screaming. Gotcha. Gotcha.
Oh,
he wasn't really an airline pilot, but he did solo.
Do you think people will have reached this point in the show, or will they already have turned off?
Well, it doesn't matter. Are you having fun?
Yeah. Hey, listen.
There you go.
We should give them something. If they make it to this point.
We're just doing this for ourselves, right? I mean,
well, you know what I would give them? I would say, wait till the end. It's going to be unbelievable.
Actually, I do have one non-aviation joke to close us out at the end.
Okay. Is it my turn?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. A young and stupid pilot wanted to sound cool on the aviation frequencies. So this one time he was approaching a field during the night, and instead of making any official request to the tower, he said, "Guess who?" The controller switched off the field lights and replied, "Guess where?"
and I like that. Now, you've been a controller. Was there ever anything silly, crazy that happened when you were a controller?
I did almost exactly that thing
Really?
with a friend of mine when he was on downwind for the North Runway. And I said, 8-9 Pop, you got the field in sight? He said, "Sure do." And I turned off not just the runway lights, I turned off every light on the airport. And he said, "It's right." Uh-oh. I said, "I'm just kidding." And then I put the lights back on. Today, we'd have probably been fired.
I just sitting here dying imagining that. I just think that's so funny. Speaking of silly things that controllers have done, I was at the Reed Hillview Airport in the Pattern one time, and there was a controller ask us, we were on downwind, true story, and he says, "Can you see the In-N-Out burger from over there?" And we said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Can you tell me if there's a line at the drive-through? Because my break is coming up here in a few minutes."
Oh my God.
Now that's a PIREP, right? Pilot report. Yeah. No line at the In-N-Out burger.
I never had an In-N-Out until we were in LA the last time. So I made that
and did you
fixture of our trip?
In fact, last week's episode, well, a couple weeks now, I mentioned In-N-Out burger. Do you know that's a common place for airplane spotting at LAX? They've got an In-N-Out burger there right next to the runway. I
heard about that. Yeah. I have not been there at that place, but I will next time.
All right, good. Well, here's more ATC. So Center says, TWA 2341 for noise abatement, turn right 45 degrees. TWA 2341. Center, we are at 35,000 feet. How much noise can we make up here? Center, sir, have you heard the noise a 747 makes when it hits a 727?
Oh, God. oh, Lord. All right. You and in case any of you out there have any comments about these jokes, Max will be giving you his email at the end of the show.
Exactly.
Okay. A guy sitting at the airport bar when he noticed a beautiful woman sitting next to him. He thought to himself, "Wow, she is so gorgeous. She must be a flight attendant. I wonder which airline she works for." Hoping to pick her up, he leaned toward her and uttered the old British Airways slogan, "To fly, to serve." She gave him a blank, confused stare, and he immediately thought to himself, she doesn't work for BA. So a moment later, another slogan popped into his head, and he leaned toward her again and said, "Something special in the air?" She gave him the same confused look. He mentally kicked himself, scratched American Airlines off the list, and decided it was time for United. "I would really love to fly your friendly skies," he said. This time the woman turned to him in the chair and said, "What the beep do you want?" The man smiled, slumped back in his chair, and said, "Oh, Ryanair."
Yeah. That's a joke for our European friends. Everyone knows Ryanair is the low-cost carrier of low-cost carriers. It doesn't get much lower.
Yeah, you'll have to do a little editing on that one. Sorry.
All right. So it seems that a young man volunteered for military service during World War II. And by the way, I just want to mention again, our plan is to offend everyone equally. So just to warn you, this is coming up. He had such a high aptitude for aviation that he was sent right to Pensacola Naval Air Station, skipping recruit training. That very first day at Pensacola, he solos, and he's the best flyer on the base. All they could do was give him his gold wings and assign him immediately to an aircraft carrier in the Pacific. On his first day aboard, he took off and single-handedly shot down 6 Japanese Zeros. Then, climbing up to 20,000 feet, he found 9 more Japanese planes, and he shot them all down as well. Noticing that his fuel was getting low, he descended, circled the carrier, and came in for a perfect landing on the deck. He threw back the canopy, climbed out, jogged over to the captain, saluted smartly, and said, "Well, sir, how did I do on my very first day?" The captain turned around very slowly, bowed politely, withdrew his samurai sword, and replied, "You'll make one very, very serious mistake."
Okay. All right. I like that one.
Yep.
Okay. Here we go. So the Birdseed 747 is inbound to London Heathrow, and after a long all-nighter, the FO is rubbing his neck and just looking miserable. Now, the ever-so-senior captain asks what the problem is. The FO rubs his neck, and it's hurting, and after such a long time in the seat, the captain obviously related to him and said, yes, my boy. I often get the same trouble. I have my own way of dealing with it. Works every time, in fact. The FO says, pray, sire, tell me your cure, Captain. Well, lad, I get in the Beamer, and while I'm driving home, I call the old girl, tell her to get the hot tub ready and fix me a big Bloody Mary, get the best lingerie that I bought her, and there you go. By the time I get home, I wallow in the tub, have my drink, and then I get out and bonk her rotten. Then sleeping with my head using her big bosoms for my pillow. You ought to try that, kid. A couple of weeks later, they're flying again, and the captain remembers the conversation. Well, did you try my cure for that neck pain? FO says, oh, yes, sir, Captain. And what did you think, he says. Well, sir, everything went just as you suggested, but I have to say, you do have a lovely hot tub.
That's so bad. So bad.
That is disgusting.
Exactly. All right. Whose idea was this anyway?
I don't know.
Bada boom. Yep, we're having fun, right? What the heck? All right, this one is kind of cute. A fighter pilot goes to a bar after a good day of flying, and while he's there, he meets a young, attractive, available lady. She is charmed by his tales of aerial combat, high-speed flight, and death-defying feats. And, of course, the inevitable happens, and they slip away to somewhere more comfortable for an evening of intimate entertainment. Much later that night, the pilot drives home to his long-suffering wife. On the way, he puts on his oxygen mask, draws the strap up as tight as they will go. When he gets into the house, he removes the mask, bravely enters the house. Immediately, he tells his wife exactly and honestly everything that happened during the evening. She replies, do not lie to me. I can see you've been flying that damn airplane again.
Oh, God. All right. Here we go. An airplane's flying over the airport, and the pilot radios in. I can't get the landing gear down. The tower controller quickly responds. Well, try everything you can. I am, the pilot says. Then in that case, the controller says, say hello to my grandma in heaven. The pilot says, why don't you tell her yourself? Well, how can I tell her myself? Because I'm headed straight for the tower.
I told my wife that joke this morning, so that's a cute one. So I got a question for you. Have you ever run across in your flying career any pilots that you would say are kind of cheap? Any cheap pilots?
Cheap?
Yeah. They cut corners, won't spend a buck, small tips, whatever.
Quite a few, actually.
A few. All right. Well, so here's one. It's about a butcher. He enters a local barber shop and gets a haircut. And when he's done, he offers to pay, but the barber declines payment. No, you're a local professional, he says, so this haircut is on the house. Professional courtesy, So the next day, the barber goes to work, and he finds 10 pounds of chicken nuggets on his doorstep, obviously, left before by the butcher. A few days later, the local baker comes in to have a haircut, and when the barber is done again, he says, I always promote professional courtesy among local businessmen, so no charge for the haircut. And the next day, the barber goes to work, and he finds 24 chocolate cakes fresh from the oven on his doorstep. So far, so good, right? Well, a week later, the local airline pilot comes in for a haircut. The barber extends the same professional courtesy to the pilot. Guess what he finds on his doorstep the next day? 120 more pilots.
Oh, God. I like that. I really like that one.
All right. Hey, along the cheap lines, let me just continue. Now, I actually wrote this one, so you'll have to let me know how it works. Okay. All right. Good. How many pilots does it take to change a light bulb?
11.
You're close.
Oh.
Yeah, it's 1 to change the bulb and 6 to tell you where they could have bought it more cheaply.
Okay, I buy that.
All right, what's on your list over there?
Okay, you ready for this one?
Yeah, what do you got for us?
Okay, Max and his wife went to the state fair every year.
Uh-oh.
And every year, Max would say, I'd like to ride in that airplane. And every year, his wife would say, I know, Max, but that airplane ride costs $10, and $10 is, well, $10. So this year, Max and his wife went to the fair, and Max said, I'm 71 years old. If I don't ride that airplane this year, I may never get another chance. The airplane ride cost $10, and, well, $10 is $10, his wife says. Now, the pilot overheard them and said, folks, I'll make you a deal. I'll take you both up for a ride. If you can stay quiet for the entire ride and not say one word, I won't charge you a thing. But if you say one word, it's $10. Now, Max and his wife agree, and up they go. The pilot does all kinds of twists and turns and rolls and dives, but not a word is heard. He does all his tricks over again, but still not a word. They land, and the pilot turns to Max and says, by golly, I did everything I could to think of to try to get you to yell, but you didn't. Max says, well, I was going to say something when my wife fell out, but then $10 is $10.
Back to the cheap pilots. Now, here's the problem, Rob. You changed that joke and put my name in it, but I didn't tell you, my wife listens to this podcast.
Oh, my gosh.
I'm going to hear about this. Oh, well. Let's see. You may have heard this one before. One day, the pilot of a Cherokee 180 was told by the tower to hold short of the active runway while a DC-8 landed. The DC-8 landed, rolled out, turned around, and taxied back past the Cherokee. Now, some quick-witted comedian in the DC-8 crew got on the radio and said, well, that's a cute little plane. Did you make it all by yourself? And the Cherokee pilot, not about to let that insult go by, came back with his zinger. I made it out of DC-8 parts. Another landing like yours, and I'll have enough parts for another one.
Okay. Okay, here's one. It's called The Smartest Man. I know ladies are already laughing at that, but 4 men were in an airplane that was going down in flames. Now, there were only 3 parachutes, of course. A priest says, I should go. Everybody needs religion. All agreed, and out he goes. Whoop. Another guy says, I'm the smartest man on the earth. Everybody needs my intelligence. They all nod, and out he goes. The old man tells the hippie, I'm old, and you have a whole life ahead of you, so you go ahead and jump. But the hippie replies, cool, dude. We can both go. Smartest man on earth, jump with my backpack.
I like your hippie voice. That's good. Well, I think we ended up with the religious jokes here toward the end because you had a priest joke and I've got a Baptist minister and rabbi joke. So our goal again is to what? To offend
everybody
equally. Exactly.
And now, are we asking people to call in or send in an email if they feel like they were left out of the offensive language?
That's right. And if they're calling to complain, remember, we told you at the beginning of the show, if you don't like jokes that might go to the edge, please don't listen. So, and I'll tell them that one more time before I read this joke. Here we go. A Baptist minister and a rabbi are flying together in an airplane. The flight attendant asks them if they would like to have something to drink. The rabbi says, I will have a martini, thank you. The minister just rolls his eye in surprise and he tells the rabbi, how dare you? I'd rather commit adultery before profaning my body with alcohol. And the rabbi quickly turns to the flight attendant and says, well, forget the martini. I didn't know I had a choice.
Oh, my God. Oh, jeez. Okay, that ought to get a few letters.
Mm-hmm, yep. Remember, send those letters to Jetwine.
Okay, and here's the last one on my list, Max. A flight attendant on an airliner asks a cannibal in first class, would you like to see the menu? Cannibal responds, no. Can I see the passenger list first?
Yeah, I'm just sitting here cracking up. I love that joke. It's cute.
You're a sick individual.
Exactly.
You know that?
Exactly.
You really are.
Yeah, that's true. All right. So here's our wind-up joke here, which is not aviation related, but it's just kind of fun, and I couldn't resist putting in here. So a police officer was patrolling late at night off the main highway. At nearly midnight, he sees a couple in a car in Lover's Lane with the interior lights on. So he carefully approaches the car to get a closer look. And when he does, he sees a young man behind the wheel, and he's reading a computer magazine. Now, he immediately notices that there's also a young woman in the rear seat, and she's filing her nails. Well, he's pretty puzzled by this situation. So he walks up to the car, and he gently taps on the driver's window. The young man lowers his window. Yes, officer? Trooper says, what are you doing? Young man says, well, officer, I'm reading a magazine. So trooper points toward the young woman in the back seat, and he says, "And her, what is she doing?" Young man shrugs and says, I believe, sir, she's filing her nails. Now, the trooper is just totally confused. Here he has a young couple alone in a car at night in Lover's Lane, and nothing obscene is happening. The trooper says, "What is your age, young man?" The young man says, "I'm 22, sir." The trooper says, "And what's her age?" The young man looks at his watch and replies, "She'll be 18 in 11 minutes.
Oh, my God. I ain't going to touch that one.
All right. So, on that note, you've wasted a perfectly good hour or half hour. Well, sir, I want to thank you for being my partner in crime here.
Do you think we could have done this on the Airplane Geeks? I don't think we could have.
No, I don't think so.
No, those guys have no sense of humor.
Well, the host in particular, especially that Rob guy and that Max guy. I mean, no sense of humor.
Just dunderheads. That's all they are. So.
Is that why we're here? Have we been sent away?
I think that what we have to realize is that we're here doing what we do because no one else could do quite what we've done to as many people as we seem to have done it to today.
Exactly. So,
and if you're really lucky, all of them will come back and let us do this again. Or would that be none of them?
Well,
I'm sorry, I'm lost.
It depends. I mean, if you like the show, let us know. If you don't, we're sorry, but we had fun doing it.
Amen. Hey, this was really cool.
Well, great. So you come back and join us again sometime for something fun. You, of course, join me for privatization. Isn't that interesting? We took a very serious topic, and then we took the opposite extreme here.
Listen, I think it's a great idea. I thought privatization was always kind of a joke anyway, though.
Well, hey, and go ahead. You were telling me the latest, right? What's the latest?
Oh, the latest is that the Congressional Budget Office said that it's going to add nearly $100 billion to the deficit if they privatize ATC. And so everybody's thinking, oh, maybe this isn't such a great thing for ATC.
Yeah. Or maybe they're thinking, what a joke. I mean, this whole idea, just crazy.
It is.
All right, my friend. Hey, where do people find you when they go looking for Mr. Rob Mark?
It depends. If they want to say something really awful, they call your hotline. But if they have something relatively nice to say, rob@jetwine.com always works, or sometimes at Flying Magazine. Who knows? Super.
Well, sir, thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll look forward to seeing you again, either here or on the Airplane Geeks podcast.
Hey, you got it, man. And listen, that money order, just make sure that you mail it off today for me, if you would.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I forgot what your fee was.
Plenty.
Plenty of jokes.
Exactly. Hey, thanks, buddy.
Take care, Rob. We'll see you soon.
See ya.
Bye-bye. And that, of course, was Rob Mark, a great friend of mine and a very nice guy. By the way, if this is your first time hearing the show, please subscribe and join us here every week. Just go out to aviationnewstalk.com and click on one of the subscribe buttons along the right column. And you can click on things like Apple Podcast, Android phones, and so on so that the show shows up on your phone. Before we wind up this show, I just wanted to let you know I won't be doing the regular news show this week since I'm traveling, but I will be posting news stories throughout the week on my Patreon page, and some of those are related to Hurricane Harvey in Texas and other GA news stories. So anybody can read those stories this week. Just type into a web browser, aviationnewstalk.com/awesome. And you can also make a contribution toward the show of as little as $2 a month, and that cost will be billed to your credit card each month. And at higher levels, we've got some rewards, like at $4 a month, you can access all of the original show notes for each episode, and at $8 a month, you can see the stories that I had to cut for time reasons and that didn't make it into the show. And for $20 a month, you get access to the original show notes for all of our special bonus episodes, like this one, which include the complete text of all the jokes. And for any contribution, I'll read your name on the show. And don't forget, if you're thinking of buying a new or slightly used Cirrus aircraft, please contact me early in your decision process, because there are a number of different considerations you probably aren't aware of, things that can tilt the decision one way or the other that aren't obvious. I specialize in the Cirrus and work with people around the country. If you love the show, please show your friends how to find this podcast on their phone. And until next week, fly safely, have fun, and keep the blue side up. All set back here, Captain, came the reply, except the lawyers are still going around passing out business cards.
I'm sorry. We got to do that one again. My
Yeah.
phone. Oh, shut up, phone.
Do what you got to do.
Hang on a minute. Go away. Okay, I'm sorry. Should we do that again?
Yeah, of course.
He looks behind door number 2 and sees a pilot that forever. Let me do that again. He looks behind door number 2 and sees a pilot that's forever. Wait a minute. I got to read that. Doesn't make sense. Sees a pilot that forever finds himself trying. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Now, hoping to pick her up, he leaned toward her and uttered the BA slogan. You mean the British Airways slogan?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay. All right. So let me just do that again. This time the woman turned to him in the chair and said, "What the?" Should I say it or should I just?
No. Just F.
Okay. What the beep do you want? Do you have any adult airplane jokes? No, probably not.
Adult airplane jokes.
Yeah.
No, there were a few that were so edgy I didn't use them.
Yeah, probably. Even we have to have our limits.
Yep, exactly.
So,
exactly.
Cool. Well, listen, this has been a lot of fun. When is this going to air so I can share it with friends?
I am going to put this up over the Labor Day weekend because I'm going to be gone. So I figured that's probably Labor Day itself. Probably set it up to schedule a release on Monday.
And you won't have to labor in order to get it up.
Yeah, exactly. I'll sit back and listen and go, what were we thinking?